So my name is Derick Van Ness. I'm a wealth strategist, and I want to share a couple of lessons that I've learned along the way. Coming right out of school as a young person, I knew that I had to pay my dues, but I was really scared of certain things that I felt were going to be important for me and my skill set, right? So what I decided to do was face my biggest fear right out of the gate, which was, how do I sell things, right? I knew that if I wanted to be able to reach people, I had to be able to communicate effectively and ideally be able to help them work with whatever ideas that I had to share with them, right? And so that was sales. And in my mind, sales was like scary and it was dirty and it was gross. And I had to find a way to reconcile that. So my first job out of school, I took like selling door to door just to overcome that fear and like slay the dragon as soon as I could. And honestly, it scared the heck out of me. I was out on the streets, door to door, business to business. Half the people didn't speak English, and it was terrifying. But I have to say, I learned the lesson that I could do it and that I could communicate with people, and that if I listened to people, I could always find a way to help them if in fact what I had worked for them, right? And then my second job out of school, I thought, okay, I can kind of meet with people, but I want to be able to reach more people. So I took a job selling over the phone. And I think in the 3 years I was at that job, I made about 40,000 phone calls, cold calls. So it was rough. Like in the interview, they were like, if you think you can do this job, just know that you have to make 200 cold calls per day. We have a call tracker, and if you don't hit that, you're fired. That's it. So it was pretty brutal. And I jumped into that, and I had to like trick myself into getting into phone calls every morning. I was like, okay, I have to make 20 phone calls before I can get coffee. Otherwise, I don't get coffee. But what that taught me was perseverance, persistence. And after making calls and calls and calls and the work ethic that goes into it, I realized that even without a ton of skill, if you work hard enough, you can get there, right? And so that was a huge lesson for me. It also showed me like that building a real business takes time, right? It's not something that you just snap your fingers and it happens. You have to show up consistently. You have to work consistently. You have to get better at your craft. And that job was really instrumental for me because it was hard enough that I had to seek help, right? And that's where I started down the personal development road. I actually met a coach and mentor, and he helped me with getting better at selling, right? Like, how do you listen better? How do you think about things better? How do you understand the customer point of view? A lot of things that when you think about selling, like from a very mature or immature perspective, it's like, well, selling's about manipulating people. Selling's about getting people to buy stuff, and it really isn't about that. What I discovered was it's about listening to people, understanding what their needs are, and helping them get what they want, even if it's not what you offer at this particular moment. If you can build a relationship with them, if you can share with them how to get what they want, you can develop a customer, even if they're not a paying one right away, right? They're on your side. And so that job was my first experience of like what it really took to build a business. Here was the problem. When I was in that job, I was in a cubicle, I was working under lights that were fluorescent, and I just remember feeling like an absolute caged tiger just in there pacing, and I'm like looking out at the sunshine, and there's none in here, and it like really started to work on me. It was tough, you know? I was there on Friday afternoons pounding the phones to hit my 200 phone calls, and everybody else is at the beach and going surfing. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I just thought, this isn't how human beings are meant to live. Like this isn't for me. Like I can make a living here, I can make money, but I can't make a life. And that was a really powerful realization for me, because I had always pictured that like that's what business was, right? You have to be in this place, and you have to work hard and be in an office and all of that. And that's when the world started to open up for me. I started looking for what could it be like, what is possible for me out there, and after a lot of study and looking around, I found that there were some other options, right? So I remember clearly the turning point with all of that, with making the decision to transition from a corporate lifestyle to my own business, right? I'd grown up in a household where my father had his own business, so I knew it was possible. I didn't know exactly what it would look like for me, but I knew it was something that I wanted. So I was searching on the internet. I was so burnt out. It was my birthday. I remember this. It was 2001. So right after the Twin Towers thing, the economy was in the toilet, and I was really frustrated. And it was because it was my birthday, I stayed home. I called in sick, even though I wasn't sick. And I got on the internet and I was looking for what can I do for a business? And I ran across some real estate investing courses. And I'd grown up in construction and I thought, okay, this is something I can do. I can take an ugly house, I can do some construction, I can make it pretty. And if I could do 2 or 3 of these a year and make $30,000, $40,000 each, that's as much as my corporate job, just grinding it out every day. And I thought, you know what? This is a smarter way to live, right? I can work hard, but I'm gonna be working smart. I'm gonna be doing something I already know how to do. I can take the sales skills, I can take what I know about construction, I can bring those together, and I felt like I had a pretty good eye for design, and I can create something that has value to people, and I could do that. And I thought, this is a better way. So the transition from starting a business is not an easy one, right? You're working a 50-hour-a-week job. I mean, I was getting up at 5:45 in the morning to be at work through LA traffic by 7 in the morning, so I could be on the phone by 8, and then they said, oh, you can leave by 5, but the successful people are here till 6 or 6:30. So I really didn't get home until 7:30 at night most nights. So that was something I was clear wasn't a fit for me, right? And so I made the decision, but it took about 6 months to really make the transition. And it was scary because I didn't know where I was going. I just knew that where I was didn't fit for me, right? And so I started saving every dollar. Honestly, I didn't go out. I didn't do anything fun. And I was putting everything I had into my job to just build up money so that I would have a cushion so that I could start this new business that I wanted. And it was really exciting, but it was really hard. I was working toward my goals, but I felt like I was also holding back my life. And so it was a really conflicted time. It was sort of, the sacrifice you have to make to move forward. I always think that before you make a jump, you have to go down to contract before you can jump and go up, right? And so that was my contraction and pulling everything in so that I could make that leap forward. And it was exciting when I did. I spent every lunch hour working on my business, worked on it on the time after I got home from work. I listened to audios and tapes on the way to work because I had a long commute, so I had 3 hours a day to educate myself. And this was before podcasts and all this other cool stuff. So I had stacks of CDs about real estate, about business, about finance, about sales in my car. And I was listening to those all the way to work and all the way home on my lunch breaks, and getting my DBA, starting a business bank account, all that kind of stuff I was doing on my spare time to really get set up to make the leap. So I remember this very clearly. The day I quit my job and started my business was May 1st, 2002. And I woke up that morning and something seemed a little bit off. I was like, something seems a little bit weird here. Come to find out, I got Bell's palsy. And if you don't know what Bell's palsy is, half of my face stopped working the day I quit my job. Well, when you're in face-to-face sales, guess what? Half of your face not working is a little bit of a problem. But I was so determined that I didn't care. I got in my car, I went out, and I went to work trying to find my first real estate deal. And it was funny, my sister came over a couple of days later to go to church, and she was like, what's wrong with your face? And I was like, oh, it stopped working, but I'm starting my business. I don't know what's going on with you, but I'm not worried about this. And she was like, you have to go see the doctor. So I guess what I'm saying is I was really determined that this is what I was going to do, and that helped propel me through. And it took a couple of months to get to where my business did anything. Because I remember I quit and started May 1st. It was mid-July and I hadn't bought a house. I hadn't done anything in real estate. I mean, I'd done a ton of work. And I remember working so hard at night, stamping envelopes and stuffing envelopes and doing research on houses that I wanted to pursue, that I thought at some point, I'm going so deep into this, I may never be able to come back. I literally felt like I was going over the deep end into crazy town for my business, and I was a little bit scared of what that might turn into. As it turns out, that's usually when things happen. I found in my experience, when you go to the point of no return, the place where it no longer makes sense to do what you're doing, where you think, Like, this just wouldn't be worth it. But if you do it anyway, A, you know that you found something you're passionate about, and B, that's when everything shifts. So thankfully, after I had this realization that I've been at this 2.5 months and literally haven't made $1, I landed my first deal. And it was $500 down to buy a house, which in LA was pretty amazing. I took over a guy's mortgage, fixed up the house, sold it, did a condo after that, and a couple of things. And in my first year, I did 3 or 4 deals, was able to make about $60,000. And I thought, darn, this is really good. This is like really close to as much as I made in a full-time job, but I'm doing it for myself. And that was really, really exciting. And so from there, like, the real estate business took off and I started making a lot of money. I was doing 2 to 3 houses a month. And as that uptick was happening, I was reinvesting in myself, which at the time I didn't realize that was what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to get good at what I wanted to get good at and that it was going to take help. So I started spending all this time and money on education and courses and personal development, business development, and I probably spent, over the course of the next couple of years, $150,000 just like learning new stuff, right? And growing my business. And I really got to the point where I'd built my business to where I had everything on autopilot. I had 3 employees, like a sales guy, 2 assistants. We had multiple streams of income coming in with rentals, and I was flipping houses. Usually we had anywhere from 10 to 20 projects at a time going, houses that were in various stages of being fixed up or closed or sold or whatever. And things were good. And I was making a lot of money. And at one point, for a short period of time, I literally didn't even have to come into the office, right? Everything was taken care of. And that was awesome. And I remember driving around in my car and thinking, my biggest problem in the world right now is that I don't have anybody to hang out with because everybody else has to go to work. And of course, as soon as that happens and you get arrogant, the world says, well, now it's time for you to learn a new lesson. So that was about 2006. And then 2007 and 8, the market started to change. And in California, the markets, I was buying houses for $200,000, putting some money into them and reselling them for $300,000. Well, overnight, the properties went from $300,000 down to $160,000, literally within about 3 to 4 months. And it was rough. At the same time, I was out living the dream, and I was up on the hill snowboarding in Mammoth. I come snowboarding down the hill, I look over, nobody's coming. I go off this jump, and coming from my left is a snowmobile. And right as I come off the jump, I see it and I go, oh man, and I turn, the snowmobile slides, or I slide into the snowmobile, bam, break my femur, in the hospital, don't know what's going on, down and out, and the economy starts to crash. As you can imagine, that was a rough time for me. I didn't know what was going on with my health. I didn't know what was going on with my business. I was cracked out on Vicodin because I needed it for the pain. And by the time I came through, the market had changed and everything was upside down. So it was kind of like being on the Titanic and it hits the iceberg and the ship's going down. And you're the captain, you're going down with it. But you can't make the ship sink any faster. So it took 18 months to sink the ship, to run out all of my resources and everything. And, I could have gotten off the ship. I could have bailed out and left all my investors hanging, but it was really important to me to get everybody off the ship that I could. And at the end of it all, I think only one investor got caught with a little bit of money, and we'd worked together before, so they understood. But in that process, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about where I was overspending. I learned a lot about where I was being inefficient. I learned a lot about my own arrogance at the time of thinking I had it all figured out. And so it was the best thing I never want to do again. It was a business breakdown, but for me, it was definitely a personal awakening. And that's sort of where I had to learn some of the next lessons in my life. So after the real estate thing melted down, I spent a year doing digital marketing, internet marketing. This is back in 2008 and 9, when it was super Wild West, right? And opt-in pages and internet and marketing and how do you do all of that? And I made a bunch of money in little pockets here and there, but you have to do a lot of 10s and 20s and 30s in sales and 50s and 100s to like really pay the bills. And I realized pretty quickly that that wasn't necessarily going to work for me. So I didn't know what I needed to do. And I really ran into a wall at that point. I had very little money. I had come from having 6 figures in cash in the bank, tons of credit, more money than I knew how to spend coming in every single month, all the way down to like selling everything I had on eBay to pay the bills. And if you've ever been there, you know that that's a really, really rough time. And you try to put on the happy face and you try to power through it, but it's difficult to know that you're going negative every single month. And I went through that for a year or two. And it got to the point where a friend of mine called me up and he said, "Hey, I've got a job for you." And I never liked the idea of a job because the first time I felt like the caged tiger. I didn't want to go back to that sort of suffocating all the way up to my neck feeling. But he was my best friend, and I said, "Okay, I'm gonna come work with you." So I moved across the country. So broke I didn't even have enough money for gas. So I put everything I had in my car. My parents gave me some money, and I was able to drive from Los Angeles to Houston, Texas. And I got to live on an air mattress in his girlfriend's apartment's living room. That was humbling. It was really humbling. And for a couple of months, that's where I started again. And then I was able to help him start building an insurance business. And I learned work ethic all over again, what it was like to be out there in the trenches every single day. And I learned how to build teams, and we learned how to make everything happen from a leverage standpoint. So that was a huge lesson for me, was learning how to leverage and work with and motivate people, because ultimately people are the asset. People are what make businesses go. Like a lot of times I think people are talking about assets like it's some foreign thing, and truly every asset comes from a human being, right? We think of rental houses, oh, that's an asset. Well, guess what pays the rent in that house? A human being, a family, right? And that really put me in touch with like what it's like to build something with a group of people, right? We were all in it together, and one person's success, one person being able to learn new techniques of how to help the team lifted everybody up. And I learned a lot about myself in that time, how to be a lot more self-reliant, how to motivate a team even though I was frustrated and stuck at times, and how to persevere. And what happened during that whole time was I elevated myself to the point where another good friend came and he said, "Hey, you've got this skill set. You've worked in real estate, you've worked in marketing, you've been a business owner, you've built teams, and you have this spiritual component, this part of you that's like worried about the greater good, that really wants to do something with purpose. I really want you to come and work with me." And that's when I started to work full-time with Garrett Gunderson. So Garrett Gunderson and our relationship goes way back. I met him when I was 20 and he was 16, and we became fast friends at an event called Governor's Honors Academy. He was a high school student. I was a mighty college student at the time, or so I thought. And he came to school with us, and we showed him around and gave him a tour and spent a couple of weeks there with this Governor's Honors Academy. And Garrett and I got to know each other so well that he ended up coming to school with us, joined the fraternity I was in, and we became essentially best friends relatively quickly. And as time went on, our relationship developed, right? We got out of school, we did some things in business together, and so we had been friends a long time when he came and reached out to me and said, "Hey, let's do business together. You've got the skill sets, I know your integrity, I know where your heart is, that's what I need in my business. We're really building something here that's not just about money, it's about helping people create a life. It's not just about helping people do better investments or save in taxes. It's about how do you find and define your soul purpose and then put the money together so that you can live that fully," right? And that was something I got really excited about, because I love, more than anything, I love helping people. And I love seeing people succeed. And so when he gave me the chance to use all my skills to truly help people it was like winning the lottery. I was just like, wow, this is what I've been waiting for. Like everything in my life has come together to be able to teach people what so many people are missing, which is how to handle your business and your finances and your life and create a balance so that you love the life that you live. And and that's a lofty goal and a lofty ideal, but we were really up to the challenge, and I felt like this is something I can do. This is something I can put my whole heart into, because I know that if I do this, even if I fail, I'm going to make a difference for people. And if I succeed, I can't think of a better job than helping most people to face their biggest fears, to untangle the biggest mysteries in their life, and create something that they've always wanted, that's lived in here, but they haven't been able to see out here. And how do we do that? And so that was the beginning of the journey that I'm on now, which is helping people, being on a mission to remove financial insecurity and help people create financial certainty in their life so that they can get out there and live the life that they're truly here to live. That's really what we're about. And so everything I've done for the last 10 years has been aligned with that, going very deep into purpose and what drives people and personality types and all the different types of fears that happen with people. How do you dig into that and help uncover what's on the bottom? Because people will tell you or tell themselves that they believe something, and then they'll act contrary to that. They'll tell themselves that they want something, and then they'll do something else that's completely counter right after that. And when you can see that and you can work with people and help them create awareness around that, it changes everything. Most people are stuck because they think they know something or they think they believe something, when in truth, deep down inside, they believe something else. And that's why they can't get there. They're like, I'm thinking this, I've got the right mindset, I've got the right ideas, but they're holding themselves back over here in the subconscious. And that's what we love to uncover. That's where the work is really done. Because mastering finances, if you know a couple of key systems, is not that difficult. But getting yourself to a place where you'll allow that to happen takes a little bit of work for a lot of people. And sometimes it's digging in and understanding where you've been self-sabotaging when you didn't even realize it. So one of the most important things that I've learned along the way that I didn't know until after I kind of fell on my face was, as you are building wealth, as you're doing well, you need to take some chips off the table and you need to set those aside to build financial certainty. What I was doing was I was creating wealth, but then I was reinvesting and reinvesting and reinvesting. And it was a little bit like being on a run in Vegas. I mean, probably a little more skill than that, hopefully. But it was like letting it ride and letting it ride and letting it ride until at some point when the economy fell apart, I had all my chips on the table and I was left with nothing. Right? And so I've learned that one of the most important things that people want to have in place is some sort of systematic savings. How do I systematically take chips off the table and put them over here where they can be safe, and at first build up some safety, but then get that money working for you? So many of us get trapped working for money, and we want to get enough money set aside over here to where we can get money working for us, right? As a business owner, it's easy to say, well, investing in my business is the best place, and that's true. But when you have all of your assets there, if for some reason that financial vehicle breaks down or sputters and you've got no other resources, you can find yourself in a tough spot. And that's what happened to me. When the market crashed in 2008, I didn't have a lot to fall back on. And by the time I realized it, I started pulling some chips off the table, but it wasn't enough, right? And so the lesson that I learned there is having systems in place to protect yourself from yourself is vital. You got to have them. And most of us think, I don't need that. I'm smart. I'm capable. I'm motivated. I have all these things going on. Or maybe you don't. I'm not so smart. I'm not so capable. I'm flawed. Whatever the case is, you need a system to work for you. Because one of the things that I've learned is that systems are consistent, and people, even with the best of intentions, are not consistent. It is almost impossible to consistently do something if you don't have a routine working for you, or a system, or a structure. If you just do stuff when you feel like it, or when it seems like the right thing to do, very rarely are you able to build the big monolith, the big mountain that you might be trying to tackle. right? And so systematic savings is the basis for that. Once you have savings set aside, you have all kinds of options, all kinds of things that you can do, and you have protection when things don't go your way. So where we are now is we've come to a place where we have systems that we know work. We've tested and tried and worked with enough people that we've seen that there's a way through this. Creating financial certainty for people, removing the myths is not that difficult. Now, how do we take this message to a bigger group of people, right? We've been in the trenches toiling for the last 10 years, kind of dialing all this in and refining it and building the network and all the different things. And it's been getting bigger incrementally, but now we really want to leverage it. We want to reach more people. Up to this point, we've been very boutique, and now it's time to take this to the masses, because I truly believe that the systems that are out there are not serving most people. They're separating you from your money. You're tying up your money till you're 59 and a half and you can't get to it. They're keeping you from chasing your dreams because you don't have access to cash. So many of the things that seem natural, like, oh, I should have control of my own money. Oh, I should be able to pursue things if I have the resources, are being taken away. And we want to re-empower people with those. So we're on a financial mission to empower 1 million entrepreneurs by 2030 to be able to pursue the things that they want to pursue in life. And that could be building a fantastic business. It could be taking care of your family. It could be some greater cause of saving the planet. It doesn't really matter. We want to empower you through financial certainty to be able to go out and fully express yourself and live what we call your soul purpose. Live your fully expressed life, a life that you can look back on later and say, I've loved my life. I may not have been perfect, but I lived it to the fullest. I did my work to the best of my ability. I gave everything I have because I was able to focus on what mattered most. I didn't have to get caught up in the minutia of what's the stock market doing, even though I don't know anything about it, or investing in things that I don't understand, or giving money to friends because they're friends but they don't know what they're doing. I could put my money into systems that I know work and that create consistency and that help me to grow and build up a foundation from which I can live my dreams. That's the business we're in. We're in the business of helping people get money out of the way so that you can fully live the life you're here to live.